This is one of the most disturbing and alarming policies Reform have announced yet. He seems like an absolute smug little bully. I think the members in the Green Party have too much power, and yeah, I can already feel like people getting mad at this. Okay, top 3 sequels of all time. The Dark Knight, Across the Spider-Verse, Oli Is Worried, Episode 2. That's right, you guys. We are back for a second episode of the podcast. Can you believe it? We didn't get cancelled after the pilot episode. Like, give yourselves... Actually, no, not give yourselves. Give me a round of applause right now. Come on, everybody. Come on. Come on. Now, I feel like in the first episode of the podcast, I did a really good job breaking down the premise of what this podcast is about. But I don't think I actually did a very good job breaking down my intention behind the podcast, why I decided to do this podcast. Now, it's not like I just woke up one day and went, you know what, Oli, I want to start a podcast. What really happened is, after I filmed my documentary, which I've briefly spoken about on the last episode, after I filmed that documentary about the divide between the north and south of England, I was able to be much more nuanced and balanced when tackling that political subject. And because I had this hobby of making these TikToks or Instagram reels about the big political story of that day I posted the video, I realized coming back from filming that documentary, I wasn't really able to be as nuanced or balanced when making those videos because we live in an attention economy. You know, when you're making videos on TikTok or Instagram, you are accommodating to the algorithm and you have to make sure you've got a great hook at the beginning and you've got to make sure it's quick and snappy and entertaining throughout for a video that's only like a minute or a minute and a half long. And when I came back from doing the documentary, I didn't really enjoy making those videos as much because I realized that a lot of those videos, it's quite hard to be nuanced. Again, with the algorithm and that attention economy. So then I did look towards doing a podcast because in a podcast you are able to be a bit more laid back, be a bit more yourself, and be able to be more nuanced and balanced with your perspectives and your takes. But anyways, now that we got that out the way, let's get into it. On today's episode, we're going to be talking about Reform's new social housing policy and how their entire immigration agenda actually has more to it than somebody's birthplace. And we're also going to be talking about the man who they want to be Home Secretary and in charge of our immigration system, Zia Yusuf, and how really he is potentially a liability to the party. And yes, that's right, we will today be talking about the Green Party this episode, and we're going to be talking about really have the Green Party hit their peak way too early before the next election.
Who is it that you're trying to turf out or deprioritise from social housing?
What we're trying to do is to give priority to British-born young workers, young married couples, young veterans,
yeah.
and that's the right thing to do. I just repeat a simple maxim,
sure,
which is the role of the British government is to look after British citizens. That is the key objective.
People with indefinite leave to remain are considered British
under
enough,
our policies, they will apply for a 5 or 10 year visa, assuming that they are contributing and they're working. And guess what? They can rent their own homes.
So here's the point: you would get rid of indefinite leave to remain.
Social housing is a privilege. It's not an entitlement or a right for people coming from overseas.
Who are the people that you want to evict? Because it says here that you will bar foreigners from social housing and they would be evicted after a short grace period. So who are the people that you're turfing out?
Well, as you've just said, overseas nationals would not have priority ahead of British nationals. But if we build more...
But those overseas nationals would have indefinite leave to remain to be in this country granted by the British state.
Okay, this is one of the most disturbing and alarming policies Reform have announced yet. And of course I am talking about their social housing policy they announced recently, which would see those who weren't born in Britain but live here and live in council housing evicted. Which means that if you are someone that moved to this country around 25 years ago and you live in council housing, you would be evicted. And as disturbing this new policy is, there are also 2 big takeaways to also take from it. The first thing is that this is yet again another desperate attempt from Reform to win back voters they have lost to Restore Britain, because guess what? This is a Restore Britain policy. But also the larger point I want to make is that Reform's immigration agenda is actually clearly very much linked to class. And what I mean by that is, if you compare the immigration strategies that Reform have and Restore Britain have, you can clearly tell that Restore Britain just want our immigration system to be the fucking preference settings from Hinge. But with Reform, their immigration agenda actually does seem more nuanced, not in a good way, but it does seem more nuanced in the sense that they want to more target the migrants that are below the upper middle class. And look, I could give multiple examples to back this argument up. First of all, Reform aren't entirely against non-dom tax status, which used to see wealthy people who lived in the UK but spent more time abroad able to pay less tax. Another example is their recently announced welfare policy, which sees those who weren't born in Britain but live here banned from ever claiming any benefits. And the last thing is their indefinite leave to remain policy, which would see non-European migrants see their visas scrapped unless they earn 60 grand or more a year. Oh, okay, just to clarify here, there's been no confirmation yet what the salary threshold would be. It's just been reported it will likely be £60,000 or more a year, and that they will confirm it nearer to the next election. And to me, this perception that Reform are trying to give to the public is very dangerous, because let's think of it this way. One of the big drivers of our British economy is our transport, from trains to planes, right? And those who work at train stations or work in our country's biggest airport, Heathrow Airport, not all those people who work in those places are specifically upper middle class or above, aren't they? But they are still contributing to our British economy due to how big of a role transport plays for our economy. But judging from Reform's logic, the economy is run by only people who have fucking Gales for breakfast every day. In Britain, we used to champion those who migrated to this country to work here, contribute to our society, no matter the salary they received. But now with Reform, we could potentially be moving to a system that is so elitist, we only prioritize those who are, again, upper middle class or above. And Reform talks so much about reforming the immigration system so it prioritizes the issue around integration much more, but then, targeting those migrants who don't earn such a big salary is a complete contradiction to their overall goal of prioritizing the issue around integration, because we then again are targeting and punishing those migrants who are integrating well in this country and doing all the right things. We're punishing them just because, they earn 30 grand or so a year, or something else, for example, and that is just bullshit. And speaking of bullshit and Reform, let's move on to Zia Yusuf, someone I've been worried about for a long time. And if you don't know who Zia Yusuf is, he is the man that Reform want to be their Home Secretary if they got into government. And what a Home Secretary would do is they would be in charge of police, crime, and the immigration system.
We will leave the ECHR and repeal the Human Rights Act, replacing it with the British Bill of Rights. We will create a legal obligation for the Home Secretary to deport everyone in the country illegally and disapply all international treaties that are used to keep illegal migrants in this country. We will grant sweeping powers for the Home Secretary to detain illegal migrants, and we will pass a law that makes clear that if you come to this country illegally, you will never be granted asylum. End of story.
You know what? Okay, I will put it this way. I would rather Nigel Farage-led Reform than Zia Yusuf, okay? If Zia Yusuf became leader of Reform, I would genuinely be like, oh my gosh, bring back Nigel Farage. Unless Zia Yusuf was doing such a bad job that like Reform were like, you know, doing terrible in the polls. Then I'd be like, hey, keep Zia Yusuf. He's great. He's doing a good job. And the reason why I am so worried about Zia Yusuf is that I think he gets worse by day. He seems to have the utmost contempt for anyone who slightly disagrees with him. A few months ago, he announced this policy.
Great piece in the Mail today about Reform. We'll hold 24,000 migrants in areas that vote for the Greens. Tell us more, Zia.
Well, as you know, Reform has announced our plan to deport all illegal migrants in Britain. It's called Operation Restoring Justice. Now, as part of that plan, we will need to detain 24,000 at least illegal migrants at any time. They will not be able to come and go as they please. They will be detained there. They will be held there for a couple of weeks before being deported. But we appreciate that there are strong feelings that some people have about living near such detention centres, and therefore we want to make really clear what our plans are and make a commitment to the British people. Based on the upcoming local election results and the general election results, we will guarantee that a Reform government will not place an illegal migrant detention centre in any constituencies run by a Reform MP or in any areas with a Reform council. And of the remaining areas, given, of course, the Green Party advocates for open borders and announced basically they want an infinite number of undocumented men to come here, we'll prioritise Green-controlled parliamentary constituencies and Green-controlled councils to put those sites. That way, this is an exercise in democratic consent, and we will not just have democratic consent for our mass deportation plan, which we know is extremely popular, but also for perhaps the more the areas which could get more tense, i.e. where we're going to have to put these detention facilities. So this is how we get that democratic consent.
Is 100% a fuck you for not voting Reform and voting Green, which if you want to get into government and you want to, you know, serve this country, you don't run a country by only prioritizing those who voted for you. You know, you need to look out for everyone, no matter what their political differences is. And that even goes for the left. If we got, you know, someone from the left in government, they also need to make sure they're, you know, making the lives of the right better, even if they don't always do things that people on the right are going to agree with. They need to put the country first before ideology. And Zia Yusuf seems to do the opposite. He seems to put ideology before country, and that's really bad. And if you also want another example of how Zia Yusuf just holds those who don't agree with him with the utmost contempt, here is a clip of him on Question Time.
When you get to 65, you're going to be sent back to where you came from. Is that what you're suggesting?
No, it's not at all. And if you had paid attention to what we were announcing, you would not have that view. My mother is a care home worker. My mother is a care home worker.
Typically rude.
My mother is a care home worker.
Be polite to people at the same time. They're not decent. What I love about my constituency is even people that disagree with me are very polite, and I think that should be afforded by you too, Zia. Be polite to these lovely people.
Yeah, that's right. He seems like an absolute smug little bully. And a couple of weeks ago, Zia Yusuf got in trouble with a number of people in UK politics because Ben Wallace, a former Defence Secretary and someone who was a Tory MP, criticised one of Reform's immigration policies for not being realistic. So instead of Zia just, you know, respectfully disagreeing and explaining why he disagrees, he decided to call Ben Wallace a traitor to this country, which not only is a really strong term to throw out to anyone in British politics, no matter your differences with that person, but also Ben Wallace is a veteran. Like Zia Yusuf calling a British veteran a traitor to Britain is like Tom Cruise being called a pussy by an actor who gets his stunt double to walk down the fucking stairs. Like, another thing about Zia Yusuf is he is incredibly thin-skinned. Whenever the media criticizes him or Reform policy, he makes out that the media are inciting violence against Reform. But, you know, whenever he criticizes someone, it's just not the case, is it? Like, Zia Yusuf tweets about the Tories and Labour like a 17-year-old who's just got dumped. Seriously, it's only a matter of time until Zia Yusuf starts posting fucking Bring Me the Horizon lyrics on Twitter. I would not be surprised if he slid into the DMs of Priti Patel and got aired. The only politician I could think of who I could call a traitor to this country is Oswald Mosley, who in the Second World War, he was a Labour politician, and then one day he stood up and said, hey, you know what? Hitler's actually kind of a sound guy, and then he became a fucking fascist. Now that's a traitor to Britain, not some random Tory MP. But after Zia Yusuf got the well-deserved backlash from calling Ben Wallace a traitor to Britain, The Sun asked Nigel Farage in an interview what he thought of this and whether he endorsed Zia Yusuf's language, and Nigel Farage actually said he didn't endorse it and he would give Zia Yusuf a telling off. But it seems that Zia Yusuf has not toned down his rhetoric ever since. I do question if Nigel Farage actually did give him a telling off. And it's all really blown up recently when Tim Montgomery, someone who ran the most popular conservative blog in the country and then went to join Reform at the end of 2024, Tim Montgomery was suspended from the Reform Party because he gave an interview talking about how Zia Yusuf had been quite difficult to work with.
There are a lot of people who are on no speaking terms with Zia, and it's nearly always Zia who initiates this. It needs to end. You cannot behave like a child in politics. You cannot have litmus tests, on so many litmus tests where you stop talking to people. And I genuinely pay tribute to what Zia, like I've mentioned, how brilliant he was on the vetting thing. He made the party organisation work. He has so many qualities, but he has to be a team player.
From the reports, it sounds like Zia Yusuf is my fucking arch nemesis from GCSE drama. Smug, obnoxious, and definitely orgasms to his own Instagram captions. Apparently, Zia Yusuf is very hard to work with inside Reform, and especially when it comes to minor disagreements, and he has butted with a lot of heads with people inside the party. So if he's becoming that much of a liability to people in the party that, someone who was seen as a big figure in the party has to come out and talk about how hard his experiences have been with that man, then I have to ask Nigel Farage, what the fuck are you doing? Get rid of this man. Because if Reform win the next election, and fuck me, I really hope that doesn't happen, but if Reform win the next election and Zia Yusuf is being this difficult to work with right now, then when he goes into the Home Office, which is one of the greatest offices in Westminster, one of the greatest offices in government, it is going to be much worse if he has this attitude and contempt for anyone who slightly disagrees with him. It would be absolutely infuriating, an absolute headache to work with that man. I've got to ask Nigel, what dirt does Zia Yusuf have on you, mate? Now, someone who Zia Yusuf should have a screen time competition with is Zach Polanski, because that would be about as close as Southgate's penalty miss in the Euros in 1996. Have the Greens peaked too early before the next election? Because you see, last September, Zach Polanski was elected as the new leader of the Green Party, which felt like a fairly new thing for the Greens because the Greens usually used to have always two leaders. And honestly, thank fuck they're anti-nuclear, because what would it be like in government? Would they have to take turns to press the fucking nuclear button? They'd have to determine who goes first for a game of rock, paper, scissors. But Zach Polanski came in and he quickly made the Green Party so much more popular than it used to be, mainly because he's a great communicator. He did this political party broadcast months ago, and I genuinely think it was one of the best political party broadcasts I have ever seen. He is that good of a communicator.
I grew up in the north, not far from here. I remember I used to wake up with this hopeful feeling, not like I was in a cornflakes advert or anything, but there was something in the air back then, a kind of ordinary hope. I've spent the last 5 years up and down the country, listening to people on streets like this. I'm not sure we feel like that anymore. There's more a hopelessness. People who are too tired to fight, too tired to sleep, kids going to bed hungry, parents lying awake in the next room knowing, powerless to change things. And people say to me, hey Zach, you're the leader of a political party, what are you lot going to do about this? And I say, we need a fair taxation system. We need to tax the people with the broadest shoulders in a fair way. But they cut me off. Hey, I'm a plumber. I've been working 30 years. I'm finally doing okay. Why are you making me the problem? Or a hairdresser. I've just opened my first hair salon. Why are you taxing me? Why are you taxing my ambition? And I wondered, why did they think I was talking about them? And now I get it. It's because it's too hard to picture. You see, there are some people in this country, when they go to sleep at night, they lay their heads on the pillows, just like us. They lie in the same darkness we do. But when they sleep, something happens. It's like the economy does a little dance for them. And when they wake up, without working a third job or doing an extra shift, they are richer, much richer. In one night's sleep, they make more than the plumber and the hairdresser could earn in an entire year. More than this whole street earns in an entire year. More than this whole beautiful neighborhood could earn in an entire year. In one night's sleep without lifting a finger.
But since Andy Burnham has came in as Prime Minister, the Greens seem to have lost voters who have now gone back to Labour, who previously had joined the Greens because they weren't happy with Keir Starmer, as they felt he was too centrist. But I would honestly argue that they started to dip in popularity before that, and it's because of Zach Polanski's social media activity. I used to follow Zach Polanski on socials, but he would repost every little bit of praise he receives that my FYP ended up looking like the fucking Zach Polanski cinematic universe. And because he reposts every little bit of praise he gets, or also just reposts pretty much anything he agrees with, he has ended up getting into trouble because of those things, as he has ended up reposting quite inappropriate things. One example being he reposted a post that was very critical of the police and how the police handled the Golders Green attacks back at the end of April, when a lot of people didn't share those criticisms of the police and were also much more concerned about the victims that were involved in the Golders Green attack. Alright, yo, I'm currently editing this and it sounds like I'm saying that Zach Polanski didn't have any concern for the victims of the Golders Green attack. No, what I was more trying to get at is that people got the impression that he got his priorities wrong, but I do genuinely believe Zach Polanski absolutely did have concerns about the well-being of the victims of the attack at the time. And he also recently received backlash for reposting a post about the Green Party that featured a man wearing a t-shirt that implied they wanted to torture Nigel Farage. So I think, yes, the Green Party have peaked too early before the next election, and I don't really see how they're going to go back up in the polls, go back up in popularity, because I think Zach Polanski's, quite crazy social media activity has actually given him a pretty bad reputation. So I'm not particularly worried about the Green Party. I just think that Zach Polanski needs to be worried about his social media activity, and he now needs to look a bit more professional when it comes to his social media pages. Another thing I would touch on, and I'm going to get a lot of shit for this, but another thing I would touch on is I think the members in the Green Party have too much power, and yeah, I can already feel like people getting mad at this, but hear me out. A report came out recently that members are drafting a policy to propose to ban police from using tasers, and it has not gone down well with the public. A poll came out today that I think about 4 in 5 people do not agree with this. And the difference with a party like the Greens compared to Labour is that members have much more of a say in what goes in the manifesto, and I don't think that fully works. I also think it's one of the reasons why your party was a complete flop. But also, these policies that do get proposed by members gives the Greens a bigger risk of getting bad press. And I do think, in my opinion, members should absolutely vote for who gets to lead their political party, but then the manifesto should be much more reliant on the leader they elected, their vision for the country, because you can't really have a main vision for the party if then you've got a number of members coming in and throwing in a bunch of policies to put in that manifesto that you might not really think is a good idea. You need to keep things so contained so you know you can fund it and everything is realistic. Anyways, guys, thank you for listening, thank you for watching, and in the meantime, overall, that's why Oli is worried.